Hi, I'm Joel, and somebody yesterday on Facebook asked how other writers, other than himself, come up with fantasy languages. And it's a fun thing to discuss. So I discussed my method, and somebody asked me to um, make something more permanent to explain my method. And I thought it was better to make a video than a blog post so that I could actually read some of it to you so you can hear, because the core of the way I do it requires rhythm. So I'll do that at the end after I talk about why. So the most important question is why. Why do fantasy authors insist on this? I hope my dog isn't snoring too loud here. Why do fantasy authors insist on making up their own languages, especially when they're writing in English? Why bother to have a whole other language? And that's one secret, is that it's usually not a whole other language. It's just a few words that sound strange, and that's usually sufficient. Right here, you can see, my kids call this the Illuminati symbol, the Eye of Providence. I can't get this to focus. Dude, lame. But it says, you know what it says, Annuit Choictis Novus Ordem Seclorum. And, I don't know what that means. I can look it up. But the point is, it's not all English on this dollar bill. Okay? There's Latin, there's Greek, I think. There's symbols. These symbols are so common that there was a whole show, Sleepy Hollow, about this kind of symbolism. Okay, they were able to build a whole monster hunting show out of the symbolism that is used in American official documents. So that's a lot of fun. But back to the question of why fantasy authors do this, and that is that it adds to the air of mystery. Okay, that a lot of people are reading fantasy because they want this kind of thing. Okay. And when you use foreign words, obviously you're writing in English, but when you use words like that, you can think of them as magic words. They have an effect on the reader, and they have an effect in the book, which is they have a significance for the characters, and they have a significance for the reader. And if done well, then they will be, they will have that dual effect. So say friend and enter is the classic example from Tolkien. And added note, Tolkien gets a lot of credit for this because Tolkien was a philologist. He was a language nut. But this goes back even further than Tolkien's writing. So, Robert E. Howard uses foreign words, H.P. Lovecraft, and probably people before them that I haven't read. There's a few different reasons to use these words. One is in proper nouns. So now when you use proper nouns, you don't have to explain what they are. So the guy on Facebook who started this discussion, he had a particular object, a magical artifact, that had a name that he coined. And my opinion on that was there's no reason to explain why. I mean, he had a direct translation for it, but there's no need to explain why, because it serves its function in the story, and you don't have to explain where you got the word from. That's your privilege as an author. The Last Omen, which is my book that I'm querying now, there were certain items of clothing that I wanted to have that name because Americans don't wear them. And I wanted them to be closer to the ancient Greek and Mycenaean, Athenian and Mycenaean things that influenced me when I was world building. And so there's a sort of a sash or upper wrap that women and men would wear in Athens, and it's called a himation. Okay, or himation, or himation, some people say it that way. And I didn't like the sound of that, so I called it imazion. And so that was just something that made sense. It's It sounded good. It worked in the sentences. She raised her amazian over her hair and, wrapped, made a veil for her face and so on. And that was just something I came up with. It wasn't my first idea, but it was the one that worked. So then the question came up of, do you need to create an entire language like Elvish? Okay, so, and I say no. I say no definitively because you're writing a story. You're not, your goal is not to create a language that people could have a conversation in. If that's your goal, then you're doing something else. Something that's cool, it's interesting, it's fun. I mean, I love language, but I have to pick and choose, and my goal is to tell stories and not to come up with new languages. So, okay, so I also explained my method, which I'm not the only person in this thread who used this method, but basically, I've studied a few languages just out of curiosity. Old English, Sanskrit, Pali, French, Chinese. I actually took formal courses in French and Chinese and German. I just love learning about languages. And so basically, if you want to come up with a few magic words, what I do is, now this sounds terrible. This sounds improvisational, and it is. But the key to it is the rhythm of it. So you can take a model language and sort of imitate the accent of it, and then just talk, and then write down what you say. So I'm always nervous about admitting stuff like this, because then I think, oh, this is why your book sucks, but again, I'm not the only one who does it this way, and I think it's effective, especially because you don't just write down the first thing you say and then stick with it to the death. Okay, you refine it, you edit it, you say it out loud more than one time. And so as far as the rhythm goes, you could use the rhythm of a foreign language. Like Chinese has a very different rhythm than English, but English mainly has the rhythm of iambic pentameter. So, whenever I'm writing dialogue, I read a lot of Shakespeare. There's nothing better for it. You can't do better than that. So let me read an example, and you'll see how I use this and what it sounds like. So, this is the first scene of the book of The Last Omen, which is the book I'm querying right now. And the scene is that the king and his wife, who's the main character, are arguing about holding a funeral inside the palace gates. So there's a lord who was murdered, and they're making a trade. He's saying, okay, well, I won't tell the big bad empire that a pirate escaped and I have to go and catch him if you will hold this funeral inside the palace gates. He says this to her because it's her job to get the funeral together. And so they're arguing about this, and turns out that's not really what they're arguing about. So, okay, so let me just read from here, page 10. So Aliatha, the queen, says, "Consider the message you're sending to Lady Genesio. You cannot consider honoring him like this and to let so many into the palace. The courtyard displayed the king's power, but it was a poor example, obligatory, but just as visible from Traitor's Tower as from anywhere in the palace. 2 tower guards decorated the perimeter gates, lashed beyond recognition, strung up by their hands. They still haven't confessed? No, he said, and they won't. They are honorable men. I believe them. And you would hold a lesser lord's funeral right there in the courtyard with those two carcasses hanging on the walls? They're ready to come down, Aliatha. That was merciful. The last pair took weeks to die. Isn't this a more important occasion? You'll insult them if you invite a minor Zelter from the Trentos. Zell Martin hasn't even returned yet. Darius, well, of course you know where Darius is. Why would she not? Zell Martin's schedule was well known. The chief Zelter Martinos of Marathea was surrounded by his own soldiers in a virtual parade as he rode under the aqueduct onto the inland roads. His absence was always conspicuous, whether or not he rode to Aliatha's ancestral home. Her mother wrote every week from Temnos about the child's coming, so she knew the baby was already born and blessed by Zell Martin, but he hadn't yet returned overland, as he deplored ship travel, accompanied by Darius and his father. Darius was second in line to the house seat. Aliatha was his queen and cousin. Knowing his affairs was a simple matter of politics and family, but there were some things Michael would never leave alone. Della Ferencia Arevatel Alash, she said. I am a faithful and obedient wife. Of course you are, he said. I merely meant... blah, blah, blah. They go on from there. So the part that's foreign is where she says, Della Ferencia Arevatel Alash, and then she translates it right away. She says, I took this vow in a foreign language to you. It must be important if it was in the language of our forebears. And there's more to that. Her people came from here and blah, blah, blah. But right away, but then she reinforces it by saying, I am a faithful and obedient wife. I'm not screwing around on you. I know where this guy is just because he's my cousin. And so the reader knows what it means right away. They could probably guess, just because from the previous paragraph, she's saying, well, of course I know where he is. He's an important guy. Why wouldn't I know where he is? What are you, what are you accusing me of? And then she says this thing. Now, that is just, again, magic words. I didn't say my marriage vows in Latin or Irish or whatever, but hopefully my wife still, takes them seriously. So a couple of books I'm going to recommend. One, because I always recommended The Black Witch by Laurie Forrest. And what Laurie does in this book, which is really excellent, is she hardly uses any foreign words at all. But when she uses them, they are very effective. So the word Steinen, which means race traitor, a woman who's slept with someone of another race. And there's only a few others. And it's really effective because the characters don't bring out these foreign words, for no reason. When they really want to accuse somebody, then they use that word, that word. So The Black Witch. And another is 12 Kings and Sharakai. Now this by Bradley P. Beaulieu. So this one really delves deep into the language, and the proper nouns are there all the time on every page. So you can see, I think the use of language in these books, 3 novels and a few novellas so far, are really excellent. There are monster names, there are names of holy days, there are names of the characters, and it's all very it's all very Persian and Arabic influenced, but it's he does a great job. And I don't know what kind of prep work he did for this. I don't know what his method is, but if you want a good example, I love these books all around. The main character whose face you can't see right here is just fantastic. So those are my methods, and see if they work for you, or tell me what your methods are. Have a nice day.